So if it's to all go down, Mullen's big deal in the Middle East may be executed as early as Sunday.
Send it to the frickin' moon, idiot.
Hi again, everyone. I hope you're doing really well. So, like I said earlier, I would come back and do a little bit more of an in-depth coverage on what I think is going on with Mullen at the moment. And, like we saw on Friday, we saw the stock give back a lot of ground. It lost 15 cents in the regular session, or 14 cents in the regular session, the equivalent of 15%, which was really heavy because that basically gave back all the gains that were made on Thursday's sharp rally. There was a bit of stabilizing, but it wasn't anything of significance in the aftermarket. The stock managed to put on a little bit over 1%. Now, because the stock is under $1 again, it's now technically on the NASDAQ non-compliant list. Now, that's nothing to be too concerned about at the moment, because when the stock falls below $1, it has to stay below $1 for a meaningful period of time, and then the NASDAQ will issue a warning. Now, the warning is basically you have 180 days to get the stock back up to above $1 for 10 consecutive trading sessions, and if not, you can actually apply for another 180 days. So Mullen Automotive, because they have just regained compliance, that sort of resets that whole process again. So I'm not too concerned about the stock sitting below $1 at the moment. But, there could be other little tweaks to the rules that we're not 100% aware of. But from my understanding, that's where we're at with that one. Now, because of the sharp sell-off on Friday, the stock will actually trade on Tuesday when the markets reopen on the short seller restricted list, which, hasn't really given much love to the stock in the last few weeks. It's been on there a few times because when the stock sells off by more than 10%, it triggers the SSR warning, which means short sellers on the day they can still enter a trade, but they can't enter the trade. They can't exit the trade as the stock goes down at a lower price. So it's kind of a way to discourage short selling in the market action and stop influencing the price. And like we saw last week, when the stock was on the SSR list, it didn't really deliver much. Now, in terms of the shorts with the stock, we have seen a bit of a rise in the percentage of the float shorted according to Fintel. That has shot up from about 11% on Thursday to over 20% at the close market on Friday. And the average days to cover has actually fallen to below one market day. In somewhat good news, if you're a short seller in the stock, the cost to borrow has actually dropped down a little bit more. It used to be above 100% to borrow. Now it's down at about 86% per share, and at the moment there's 250,000 shares available to short, a number which has picked up towards the end of Friday's session. So it sort of shows that there were some shorts returning, and there was definitely some shorting action taking place on Friday's trade. Now, moving on to the big news that everyone's kind of obviously hanging out for. I think a lot of the stuff with the share price at the moment and the way the shorts are going isn't too concerning for Mullen shareholders. They're used to a lot of pain. But what they're really hanging out for is what's going on with this Lawrence Hardge negotiated Middle Eastern deal. Now, this is supposed to be quite a big thing, and people have had like a flip-floppy relationship with it, because part of it's because the way Lawrence Hardge kind of publicly carries himself, it's probably not the most becoming of someone who is a senior member of a listed company. But at the same time, I think it's just a matter of who he is. He's kind of been thrust into this position. He's someone who kind of sees himself as a bit of an inventor. So he's kind of someone who like tweaks with toys and, builds things and that. So, he's not really used to the corporate life in my mind. That's how I kind of view it. So I try to cut him some slack where I can, but, at the same time, I can see why his personality can be a little bit damaging for what's going on with the company. Now, in terms of the deal, so based on what came out on from Financial Journey's channel, that guy named Cal, and what was confirmed by Lawrence Hardge via a post that detailed everything, was that the nature of, or the size of the deal is going to be more than 10 times what Mullen is currently doing in sales for EVs, and that's Mullen's share of it. So that means if the Mullen's doing 2.79, or say $280 million in sales so far, that means their share of this deal is going to be at least 2.8 billion, which puts the deal at about 5.6 billion as kind of a rough minimum. Obviously, we don't know the final numbers, but it's not maybe it's not quite as big as the 10 billion that Lawrence was initially talking about. Maybe he was talking about 10 billion in another currency, but 5.6 billion, look, that's still a huge deal regardless. I know he kind of loosely said 10 billion and people kind of keep coming back to that, but even if it's 5.6 billion, that's a really significant deal. And it might be a sign that, there is some real legitimacy to what the potential of the EMM product is. And that means it could lead to further sales. So as part of all this, it means that Mullen's going to have to ramp up production facilities for this product. Obviously, they have to be able to scale it significantly to meet this sort of demand. And I think there's been some rumors that there's already kind of like some warehouse assets that this is going to be targeted at. In terms of the size of the deal, just going back to that for a second, it has been sort of, I guess, loosely confirmed that it's not just with Saudi Arabia, the deal. It's going to possibly involve multiple countries from the region, which might mean that maybe the Saudi deal might equate to the 5.6 billion and the rest kind of chips in from the other nations that are looking to take part in the deal as well. We obviously, again, we don't know this stuff. This is all pure speculation. And there's also the talk of another potential automaker being involved in the deal. Now, bringing in another automaker, an international one, is like the wording that has been said, kind of sort of helps give further legitimacy to this technology if they're looking to integrate it as part of their vehicles, which I think is also Mullen's plan. Now, if there's any concern of whether Mullen's going to lose out from this, I don't think there is any need to, just because the MAEO LLC is going to possibly be partnering with another automaker. Mullen Automotive owns 50% of the LLC, so whatever sales or deals come from that, they will get a 50% exposure, unless it's a sort of deal where this other automakers are going to actually pay into it and buy equity into the position, which might which will help scale the LLC, but it would actually dilute Mullen's position. But at the same time, it might mean that they're able to actually extract significant revenues later on. Now, the other thing that's worth talking about, this is a big deal, but we don't really know much about what the profit margins built into the sales of these products are like yet. And obviously, with the need to ramp up production and stuff like that, it's going to be an expensive process that Mullen's going to have to undertake, as part of this, this venture. So, this could actually lead to some further short-term pain for the actual stock, because it's going to mean potential depletion of more financial resources. However, depending on what the nature of this deal is in the Middle East, a lot of the funding may actually come from it. It's no secret that a lot of the Middle Eastern countries are often willing to pay a good chunk of cash up front for big deals, which they think are quite strategic, and especially if they are looking to take some sort of equity in the deal. We obviously don't really know how this is all going to pan out, but it's just something to consider. Now, like I sort of said at the very start, this deal could be announced as early as Sunday. I wasn't actually expecting it to be announced on Friday, just because I know that in the Middle East and Saudi Arabia particularly, obviously being a very conservative Islamic country, their weekend is different to ours. They actually operate on a Sunday to Thursday. So Friday and Saturday are their weekends, and Friday is a particularly religious day. It's when everyone goes to the mosque, and it's kind of like going to church, I suppose, but not going to church. Anyway, you get the point. It's like their holy day. Friday's like their really holy day. So there wasn't really going to be anything announced on Friday. I was never expecting that. Saturday, probably not, it's the weekend. So their business week starts on Sunday, which means we could possibly see something come out as early as Sunday. If they want to time the announcement for market open on Tuesday, we could see something come out on Tuesday, because obviously the stock exchange is going to be closed on Monday. But in terms of Lawrence Hardge's deal, he sort of said it's going to be done by May. So really the last date could be announced is kind of Wednesday. So, I guess we've got to kind of buckle in and see if this rocket's actually going to launch for Mullen in the end. And then hopefully we can kind of get some clarity on actually how beneficial it is going to be for the company. Obviously, Mullen having 50% of the stake and 50% of the earnings that are going their way. Lawrence Hardge looks like he's going to be a very, very wealthy man. So he's going to be having some really good dinners on Facebook soon, I think. Anyway, that's about all I'll talk about for here. I know I've kind of gone on a little bit. Share your thoughts on what you think is going on with Mullen at the moment. Do you think the deal's going to be finalised by Sunday, or do you think it's going to be a little bit later? Also, what do you think if the deal isn't finalised? What does that actually mean for Mullen Automotive? Is this would that be like because this would be a particularly big blow to the confidence of investors if it doesn't actually go ahead. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it all. Enjoy your long weekend if you're in America. If not, all the best. May the markets trade in your favor. Cheers.